Okay.
All right. I'll wait for the other beard to get here.
Oh!
Use our high-tech remote control.
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, welcome back. This is Two Beards in a Bible.
I'm Dave Tenney.
And I'm John Swain.
Yeah.
All right. So
How did we get so clunky on that intro?
Right.
I've done this hundreds of times.
Where are we? Where did we leave off?
It was in chapter 8, 2 Corinthians 8, verse 8. And I think I'm supposed to read.
Okay.
Where am I going to read to? Let me look. I'm going to read to verse 15.
Okay.
He says, so just to set this up, we just got done reading in the beginning of chapter 8 about giving. So Paul used the example of the Macedonian church and how they had given out of their poverty. And he tells the Corinthian church, he says that they should abound in this grace also. So in verse 8 he says, I speak not by commandment, but I am testing the sincerity of your love by the diligence of others. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that you through his poverty might become rich. And in this I give advice. It is to your advantage not only to be doing what you began and were desiring to do a year ago, but now you also must complete the doing of it, that as there was a readiness to desire it, so there also may be a completion out of what you have. For if there is first a willing mind, it is accepted according to what one has, and not according to what he does not have. For I do not mean that others should be eased and you burdened, but by an equality, that now at this time your abundance may supply their lack, that their abundance also may supply your lack, that there may be equality, as it is written, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered a little had no lack. I don't know where that's from. That is in First 15.
Exodus 16:18.
Okay. Let's look that up.
Uh-huh. Exodus 16.
Now, you know what I bet you that's talking about is manna. I bet you money that's what that's talking about.
Not supposed to bet, Dave.
I bet you a
So when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, let no one leave any of it till morning. So yes, we're talking about manna.
We're talking about manna.
Yeah. And, that's, it's an interesting statement there, that, where is it? He who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. So, I mean, everybody had what they needed. And, and there's a great comfort in having what you need.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And not to have to worry about all the things that you don't need.
Yeah, good old Maslow, he had it right? That's I think that, so he's giving them some further teaching about why they should give, right?
Yeah.
And some of it's a little bit tongue twisting.
Mm-hmm.
So he says that in verse 10, he says, I give advice. He says, it is to your advantage not only to be doing what you began and were desiring to do a year ago, but now you also must complete the doing of it. So he must be talking about their original commitment when they first became Christians,
right?
And and all the things all the things that they wanted to accomplish. And I think he's talking about their abundance.
Yeah,
and that, of course, and Corinth was a very wealthy area.
Mm-hmm.
It was a port, had I think 2 ports.
Yeah. Now, it's important in verse 8, where he says, I speak not by commandment, but I am testing the sincerity of your love by the diligence of others. So there are others that have nothing that have been giving,
Yes.
and you that have something, well, you need to think about that. You need to think about what is proper.
Yeah.
And that just, again, I think so many people think about the giving, as the Lord's Church comes together on the first day of the week. So many people think of that giving as some sort of a have to, and even though it's not written in the New Testament, we still many fall back to that 10% thing, and
Oh yeah,
we have to calculate out what's 10%, and they don't want to give anything more or less. But we have such freedom, we have such liberty under Christ and under this new covenant. He leaves it up to us, and I think that anybody who has given from the heart understands just how much the Lord means, that you're going to have enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it never ceases to amaze me, how much the Lord takes care of his people.
Oh yeah.
It is just evident if you just pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, I know, my wife and I both got raises,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked, and we're like, well, we got to give God a raise too.
Mm-hmm.
So we increased our giving, because I guess the way I look at it is God had increased our blessings.
Right.
So we got to share that with somebody else.
Right. And it's important to think in that way. Not just because we want the church to have all this money in the bank, but
yeah.
But it takes it's really more about us sacrificing of what we have. In a different time, the things that we would be giving, wouldn't be money. It might be of something else that we have that we produce in our land or something.
Right.
It's about us being willing to give and to help others and to be those that are wanting to take part in the work of the Lord.
I remember being at the Baptist church when I was a kid, and this fellow walked in with 2 bottles of whiskey, and walked up to the pulpit and set them down in front of it, and the preacher says, "Now, what's this all about?" And the old drunk goes, "Well, Pastor, I heard you say you were supposed to give 1/10. He goes, "All I could find was these 2/5."
So that's not a real story.
No, that's not a real story.
That's pretty interesting.
That's an old joke, buddy. That's
right.
An old
joke.
All right. Verse 16. Is it my turn?
No, it's my turn, I believe.
Is it?
Yeah.
Read till the end of the chapter, John.
All right, starting at verse 16. But thanks be to God who puts the same earnest care for you into the heart of Titus. For he not only accepted the exhortation, but being more diligent, he went to you of his own accord. And we have sent with him the brother whose praise is in the gospel throughout all the churches. And not only that, but who was also chosen by the churches to travel with us with this gift, which is administered by us to the glory of the Lord himself, and to show your ready mind, avoiding this, that anyone should blame us in this lavish gift which is administered by us, providing honorable things not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of men. And we have sent with them our brother, whom we have often proved diligent in many things, but now much more diligent, because of the great confidence which we have in you. If anyone inquires about Titus, he is my partner and fellow worker concerning you. Or if our brethren are inquired about, they are messengers of the churches, the glory of Christ. Therefore show to them and before the churches the proof of your love and of our boasting on your behalf.
Okay, so it seems like they had given, the way I read this is that they had given some financial gift.
Mm-hmm.
The Church of Corinth, and obviously this is going to Jerusalem, to the Judean church. What the heck are them boys doing out there?
I just saw those lights going
Yeah,
by.
me too. It's maybe it's the aliens. Uh, but thanks to God who puts earnest care for you into the heart of it, for he not only accepted the exhortation, uh, but those praise the gospel. Not only that, by the church with this gift.
Mm-hmm.
Travel with us with this gift in verse 19.
Right. And so the thing is they say, basically that give the glory to the Lord in that thing. It's not, they're not looking for glory in that they've brought this gift.
Right. He says, which is administered by us to the glory of the Lord himself, and to show your ready mind, avoiding this, that anyone should blame us in this lavish gift which is administered by us, providing honorable things, not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of men. So,
speaks to that idea of an example to all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, it seems to me it's talking about some huge financial gift.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree with that?
It sounds like it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he says, we have sent with them our brother, whom we have often proved diligent in many things. So that's probably Silas,
Mm-hmm.
Titus, Tim. I'm not sure who.
Yeah, and going on, at the end here when he says, if anyone inquires about Titus, he is my partner and fellow worker concerning you. Or if our brethren are inquired about, they are messengers of the churches, the glory of Christ. Therefore show to them and be before the churches the proof of your love and our boasting on your behalf. So that again leaves us with that idea we mentioned some time ago about, there's kind of these people are going to come, show them who you are. Show them these things that I've been telling them about you are true.
Yeah.
And that again, it kind of shows the love, the love for Paul, from Paul towards the churches too. He wants them to succeed.
Yeah.
He wants them to have a good report from others.
Yeah. He wants them to be a giving group. Yeah. And really, he talks a lot about giving here.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 9, now concerning the ministering to the saints, it is superfluous for me to write to you, for I know your willingness, about which I boast of you to the Macedonians. The Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal has stirred up the majority. Yet I've sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this respect, that, as I said, you may be ready, lest if some Macedonians come with me and find you unprepared, we, not to mention you, should be ashamed of this confident boasting. Therefore, I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go ahead of time and prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you had previously promised, that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he's kind of talking about being prepared, that they needed to be prepared to help people.
Right. And it carries on this idea of saying what you mean and meaning what you say, letting your yes be yes and your no, no.
It sounds like they had promised to do something.
Right.
And that's probably what he was talking about earlier when he talked about the thing that they were desiring to do a year ago in chapter 8.
Right.
In verse 11, I think.
And now you might finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now he's talking about, well, they did that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So.
Yeah. And then in verse 6 there.
Go ahead and read to the end of the chapter, John.
Okay. Starting at verse 6, is that where you want me to go from?
Yes, sir.
All right. So verse 6, but this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always, having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, he has dispersed abroad, he has given to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. Now may he who supplies seed to the sower, and bread for food, supply and multiply the seed you have sown, and increase the fruits of your righteousness, while you are enriched in everything for all liberality, what causes thanksgiving through us, which causes thanksgiving through us to God. For the administration of this service not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also is abounding through many thanksgivings to God. While through the proof of this ministry they glorify God for the obedience of your confession to the gospel of Christ, and for your liberal sharing with them and all men, and by their prayer for you, who long for you because of the exceeding grace of God in you. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift.
Okay, so he comes on with this idea about sowing sparingly and reaping sparingly. So I guess, if you're planting a cornfield and you only put one seed every 3 feet,
Right.
you're not going to have a whole lot of corn.
Right.
So if you want to have a lot of corn, you need to put down the seed.
Yeah. And this is where a lot of people go astray, religious people, and they start to take this and build a prosperity gospel out of it.
Right.
That, you give more and God will give you more. And well,
that's not talking about this. That's not even talking about that.
Right. Right. It's really, it goes on and talks about, giving as he purposes in his heart and not being grudging, and not for it not to be a grudging thing.
Right. And that's talking about our attitude.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
We shouldn't be like, oh, I could have used this $100 for whatever, and I've got to give it to the church.
Right.
I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and while it is true, that, and it doesn't even have to do with money. When we think about the time that we put into the scriptures, our reading and our studying, if we just open the Bible on Sunday morning,
that's the only time we're looking at it.
You're going to reap sparingly in the spiritual department. You're not going to learn quickly. You're not going to. You're certainly not going to make. You obviously haven't made that an important part of your life. So it says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, giving is you making a sacrifice of the things that are under your control.
Right.
For a spiritual purpose.
Yeah.
And he uses this example at the end of Jesus, right? He says, glorify your God for the obedience of your confession to the gospel of Christ, and for your liberal sharing with them and all men, and by their prayer for you who long for you because of the exceeding grace of God in you. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. He goes back to the gift that Jesus gave by dying on the cross.
Right.
He brings it back to that.
It brings anything that we can bring to the table. It kind of brings it to pale in comparison.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
He gave everything.
Right.
So, giving's I think sometimes preachers, it's a hard subject to preach on sometimes. I make the lessons I've done, and I always make the point. I said, the Old Testament was for our learning. I said, and God was happy with 10%. And here's what I would say: that ought to be a goal to start with,
right?
Not to end with,
right?
But there's an Old Testament example. You want to know what God was happy with? He was happy with 10%. Right. Well, if you're trying to think about how much I should give, well, consider that.
Right.
You're not commanded to tithe, but you should consider that teaching.
Yeah.
I think you should give more than 10%.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is absolutely pointing to the idea that we need to examine ourselves and to be serious about this thing.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing that we don't have that exact. We don't have that exact limit, or that exact commandment as far as how much.
Yeah.
That leaves us to work towards doing better.
Oh yeah,
always.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you take the 10% mark. I know there was a time in life where there was no way I was doing that.
Right.
Nor can I even get close to it.
Right.
But as you get on in life, and hopefully you made some
Well,
wise decisions, you can
that
get
leads
to
to
that.
the preparation that you make.
Mm-hmm.
In everything that you do, you should be thinking about, how is this going to affect my ability to serve?
Yeah.
To serve our Lord. And so the choices that we make, forsaking some of the things that we just desire but don't need, um, we can set ourselves up, and it doesn't matter. As I thought of just recently, and I was speaking on the subject of giving, and it is my understanding and conviction in the scriptures that as a avenue of worship that giving should be done on the first day of the week. And so if you that doesn't mean that you have to give if you're only giving once a month. It doesn't mean that you have to give more. It just means that you should plan.
Yeah.
And if you give $4 a month and there's 4 weeks in a year, as an example, then make sure you're prepared with $1 a week
each time.
And be serious about that command, and be serious about and diligent about what you give, and can you give more? Is there a need? And you should be ready, as you pointed out, another brother, making ready for the eventuality that there could be someone in need.
Yeah.
And that the same things need to be done, in the church.
Yeah.
And the same things need to be done individually.
Yeah. Like I've never expected my kids to give until they had jobs.
Right.
And I've told them both. I said, well, now that you're making money, now you need to,
right.
You need to give some back to God.
Right.
I don't tell them how much.
Right.
I just leave that to them.
Yeah.
But that's, while kids are at home, they're not making any money. I mean, I wouldn't expect a kid.
Right.
Some parents will give them some money to get them used to the idea of putting
when they're
money.
little, then maybe that's something to prime their brain into thinking in that way.
Yeah.
But and it's the again, it means more if you don't like I've never told my children you have to give, on the first day of the week. They've heard it. Yeah. They've heard it in lessons and so on. And it's kind of heartwarming to see them give.
Yes.
And when they have the means, they're thinking of those things.
Yeah.
And that's showing some good fruit.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's something that each of us should, if we are forsaking that part of what the Lord has commanded of His people, then we should feel bad about that.
Yeah.
We should want
absolutely.
to change, just as He wrote the letter to Corinth for them to change things. We should be willing to make those changes.
Yeah. He said God loves a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
And that should be the attitude. He contrasts it. He goes, don't be. He says, don't give out grudgingly out of obligation, but give cheerfully because you want to do it.
Right.
So.
And that's a conversation you have to have with yourself. You have to be at peace with that check before you write it. Or the money that you're giving. And if you're if you're not at peace with it, then you have to wrestle with that and how much, and is this a fitting amount?
Yeah.
And do I need to change something else in my life so that I can give a fitting amount? It's all left to the individual.
Oh yeah.
But we have plenty of guidelines, as you pointed out. A tenth being something that we understand was pleasing to the Lord in the past.
Yeah, it's a place to
that's a good place to start.
About.
Yeah.
A lot of times what happens too is and you'll see this as people will get themselves in a financial position to where they can't give properly, whether they've bought too big of a house,
right,
or too many new cars, or too many vacations.
Right.
But a lot of times people put those things above, their obligation to God.
Right.
And we got to be careful about that.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't have a nice car.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't go on vacation. But when you're putting $20 into the offering plate and you just bought 2 new cars or you're going to Hawaii,
Right.
You probably need to do some soul searching,
Right.
right?
Right. And it, it's it's the same thing with things like time. It's, do we show up at Sunday services because we feel like we have to?
Right.
Is it an afterthought, or is it something that we look forward to?
Yeah.
It's we have to get ourselves into that
Yeah.
way of thinking.
Yeah. It isn't check boxes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just check those boxes and show up and leave.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, John. I guess we
Is
can
that it?
shut her down.
All right. Well, thanks for joining in. This has been Two Beards and a Bible. We'll see you next time.